has changed with the YouTube phenomenon, if you want to call it that. The equipment cost is so low. It's just now the storytelling talent and their ability to understand the filmmaking genre and put out more and more and more of these to the point where the people who are paying attention can no longer ignore you.
Welcome to Off the Lot, the podcast for filmmakers building careers outside the studio system.
We're your hosts, Ken Kabatoff and Anthony Epp, and this is where we break down what it really takes to get indie films made.
Let's dive in. All right, and we're back. Anthony, hello, it's good to see you. It's been a little while since I've been around.
Yeah, it has. This is a treat. We are back in the same session together.
Well, it seems like I pop in and then I get busy with post-production or something like that, and I have to hop out, and then you handle an interview, and you're doing great. The interviews are great. I love listening to them. And yeah, I'm excited to be back here and, catch up about a whole bunch of things. So yeah, how are you doing? What's new on your side?
Doing really well. I have lots of internal updates on Quiet Canadians, which are, again, under this sort of auspice of can't talk about them yet, but we do have some very cool developments about to happen. And I will be very excited to announce them once they come to fruition. But there really is, I think the bottom line expectation that I think is fair to say is that, we're moving forward. The project is kind of in a one way or another going to be done in the next year, within the next year. And I'm talking about from production to post-production. Like there's a plan afoot for the project to be basically completed in post-production by this time next summer. So we will have more updates as to timing and so on as the days go on, but that we can publicly announce. But that's definitely the path we're on, which is really exciting because there's sort of a feeling of inevitability to how things are coming together, which I'm supremely excited about.
I think you have to have that feeling of inevitability. Otherwise, there will always be an excuse for it not to happen, right? Like you kind of have to just say like, no, it's happening. Like I may not have all the pieces in place right now, but it's happening. And, to any doubters out there, like you're wrong. We're going to figure this out. And it may not happen exactly the same way that I'm imagining it right now, but it's going to happen. And there's going to be a version of this movie done, a year and a half from now that we could look back on and say like, yeah, we pulled it off. We did this. So.
Right. And as you know from your project, every movie is an entrepreneurial adventure, which basically means that you are usually dealing with, out of 10 people, there's 9 people who are very skeptical about the project for a variety of different reasons. The experience they have is that it has to be X amount of money, or it has to be a certain way in order for it to be successful, or they're questioning your ability to carry it off, or they don't like the subject matter, or they don't think that movies have any value anymore in the current world the way that it is, or for one reason or another. And what you're always looking for are those 1 out of 10 people who take a look and go, I see what you are doing, and I believe in your ability to execute it and to carry it off, and I want to be a part of it. And ultimately, that's what you need to make these things successful. So, because belief by yourself is one thing, but getting people to buy into not just the vision, but the method, the approach, the fact that you can do this and that we are the right people to do this. And in fact, may even be the people the one group of people who could accomplish this. That's really what you're just looking for in partners. So, and I'm sure you found that with Remnant as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Like 9 out of 10 people won't buy into it for whatever reason. And there's 1,000 reasons why not. I found that and maybe this is just who I am. I'm an optimistic person by nature, and I'm generally quite positive. Look, I have my moments, but when something bad happens, I do like to find like the silver lining. Like, okay, this wasn't meant to be, but what did I learn from this, and how do I move forward? But that's just naturally who I am. Some might also call that delusional. And I think I have to be, in order to do this, you have to be delusional. You have to believe that like what you're doing is the right thing, and, go at it with everything you have, and the haters are going to hate, and you're going to just figure this out. And honestly, we had Matthew Servey on a few weeks ago, right? And Matthew is my EP on Remnant. And we had a meeting with him. It was actually right around this time last year. I would say like last May or June when we first got introduced. And the film was much different back then when I met with Matthew. Like, it was much smaller. It was $1 million horror film. I remember even telling Matthew, like, no, this is so like run and gun. We have no money for anything. We're not going to have a transportation coordinator. Like, we don't have money for that. And boy, was I wrong. Like, things just developed. But even in that meeting, and to Matthew's credit, like he did believe in us eventually. But I think that even in that meeting, he was going like, "What, you guys are crazy. Like, how are you going to pull this off? Like, okay, I'll support you and I'll give you advice and I'll consult, but this is bananas." And eventually my delusional nature just kept, knocking on doors and figuring things out. And we got the money miraculously. And here we are. And the budget has more than doubled. So, but also looking back at it, it needed to be the budget that it currently is. Like, if we wanted to pull this movie off the way that I had imagined, for sure, there's a $1 million version of Remnant. There's a $500,000 version of Remnant, but it's not the Remnant that we have today, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But anyway, we just kept fighting and talking to people and trying to get more money, and we pulled it off somehow. So.
What you brought up was an interesting point, though, is that you had a vision for the movie that could be accomplished on a budget level you at that moment were comfortable working within, or felt that you could achieve it within. And that produces the inevitability, because I've learned from you, I've learned from even Zach Leposki and Freaks, where the idea is that they knew they were going to make the movie that they made. It definitely was not the movie that eventually wound up being made, and it definitely wasn't. It was a much bigger movie once it got completed. But you needed that moment, that initial kernel of, look, we can do that. We're going to do this movie for exactly what it needs to be made for, regardless of whether we get more financing. Afterwards, you realize that the movie that you did end up making could not have been made with any less money.
Yeah.
But had you not gotten that money, there was a version of this that could be achievable. It just wouldn't be the same movie.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we just kept, moving forward an inch at a time, and then going like, oh, we have an extra inch. We have an extra inch. Okay, let's take that and let's run with it. And to Zach and Adam's credit, they were going to make that movie for free, for nothing. And they were going to cam up it themselves and maybe even act in it themselves in that very first version, right? That they told us, talked about last year. And eventually they got a little bit of money, and then more friends and family kicked in, and they ended up raising like $1 million. And so they had $1 million, and that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so they made $1 million film. And that's just how these things work. You might end up with the same amount of money that you're asking for right now. You might also find yourself actually getting more money down the road. And that's kind of what happened to us in some weird way, like because of the way tax credits work and not having any soft money in our film. We're in a position where the tax credit allowed us to actually, pad the budget a little bit more and get more in post-production. And even our whole team is like, well, this doesn't ever happen, because almost every film that gets made in Canada has Telefilm or Creative BC. And when you have soft money that comes in that way, it grinds the tax credit down. So you're never really getting, you still have quite a good amount of tax credit coming in as a buffer, but not as much as if you were just completely privately financed. And so like, I'm not getting into the numbers or anything like that, but it was like, oh, okay, we can spend a little bit more on visual effects now. Okay, sweet. I don't have to cut shots. I don't have to sacrifice or change my vision for these sequences, because we can't afford that now. And we're finally in a good position. But God, leading up to the movie and trying to pull this off for the dollar amount that we had, that was crazy. That was absolutely so difficult. And we squeaked by. And then now we found ourselves, in having to get a little bit more money for post-production. We're in a pretty good position right now. So we're right on track to finish, mid-August right now. That's the target.
And let's get into that now. Like, so where are things with Remnant at this stage?
Yeah, so we're deep in post-production. Obviously, we locked picture a few weeks ago. I think we locked picture like May 8th. So we wrapped production, February 26th. We locked picture May 8th. That's about 10 weeks. And normally on any, Hollywood studio movie, a director would have 10 weeks for their director's cut, and then it would go into subsequent cuts at that point. But we had to rush everything, right? So I had just a couple of weeks for my director's cut, and then we had a test screening. That test screening, again, I keep thinking about this, like at least every other day it comes up that test screening was excruciating but so helpful. And you really, really need to test your movie and find out what's working and what's not working. And I'm very excited for the people who watch the movie in the test screening. That, I mean, if they like it and want to see the final movie, I want to see their reaction once they get to see it again, because it's going to be night and day. It's night and day. But that test screening allowed us to go back and do reshoots. Actually, not reshoots. We didn't reshoot anything. We just did additional photography. And it allowed us to clarify a bunch of story points that they were clear to us, clear to the actors, clear to everybody making the movie, but not clear to an audience with fresh eyes. And so that helped us rewrite part of the script, do some ADR fixes, and so we locked picture. We're now working on sound design, score, color, and visual effects. So a couple of weeks ago, we went to our post facility, Elemental. Huge shout out to Dave Tomiak and the team at Elemental Post. They're truly remarkable. I love working with them. They are a boutique post-production facility here in Vancouver, but they're slowly on the rise, or maybe not so slowly. Actually, they did the movie Eternity, starring Miles Teller and Elizabeth Olsen, and what's his name? Is it Callum Turner, the potential new James Bond? Is that the guy?
One of them, yeah.
one of them, yeah. I think he'd make a great James Bond, actually, personally. But he's great, and so Elemental color corrected and was the post facility on that film, and so they're doing Remnant. So we went in for 5 days of color in their beautiful theater, and that was such a great experience because I'd never actually colored a movie this way before. Like, I'd made short films, and then you send the film off to your colorist and they send something back, and you look at it like on your iPhone or on an iPad to make sure the colors are accurate, because even TV settings, you can't really trust that. But this was like 5 days of us sitting in loungers in front of a theater screen as Dave mixed, or not mixed, but colored the film. And it was funny to me because I was joking about the projector. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like, would you do like get this on Amazon or something? And Dave's like, no, let me show you the projector. He took me into the back, into the projection room, and this thing is like half the size of my car. It's the same projector that is in the best Cineplex theater in Canada. And so you're getting the best picture possible, and the movie will never, ever, ever look as good as it does in this theater. Or I guess unless you go to, a Cineplex or even that specific Cineplex and watch it a certain way. But the coloring process was just really, really cool. And so we went through, scene by scene, shot by shot, figuring out what the style and tone of this movie is. And I thought the movie looked really, really, really good already, because when we were shooting it, we shot for a few days with basic LUTs and just a basic color setting on it. And then on one of the days off, we actually went to Elemental and we took our dailies and we created LUTs for the movie. So we had like a daytime interior, a daytime exterior, interior night, interior, basement, interior. There's this sort of like other world that's called the tether. And so like, here's a basic version of what that looks like. And so we applied those LUTs even in the edit to really just get a sense of what this movie looks like. And it looked good. And a lot of people commented on how good the movie looked. And then we went into color, and I can't even watch that old version of the movie at this point. Like, now that I have the new, like the first color pass, it's mind blowing. I'm so amazed at like how good this movie looks and what Elemental was able to do. It's really cool.
I found that with coloring like that, it's so interesting how, every step of the way you're kind of like, that looks really good. And then when you get a nut, you get, oh, I'd like to, we're trying this. And you start to go like, oh, wow, that's even better. I can't even imagine the old version now. It's like the version you saw on set, you thought was like, oh, I'm pretty happy with how this looks on set. Even if this is what I get in the end, I'm going to be really happy. But you're right. Like every little nuanced tweak along the way starts to really elevate it. And I find the same thing happens with sound design. You think to yourself, oh, it all sounds great. It's a great sounding movie. But then you get the experts to kind of do their magic on it. And suddenly, oh, that's so much better. That's way better.
Yeah.
That's better than I imagined it before.
Well, again, you nailed it, right? They're the experts. And so even with our sound design, like with the test screening cut, like we had temp sound effects in there, which are from sound libraries that, our assistant editors have picked up over the years, and the sounds were good. And the temp score that we used was effective in telling the story. But yeah, sound design, we're going to start mixing the movie in 2 weeks. And so there's another, week of mixing there. And we're working with Maverick Post, whose most recent credit was Backrooms. And they've done other Osgood Perkins horror films. So like, I know I'm in really, really, really good hands in mixing this movie. And I even told our sound team there, led by Gregor, like, just because we have sound effects that are temp in the cut that you're watching, don't feel locked into putting a sound effect there or something very similar. Like, really just like bring something to the table that maybe we didn't think of, and just, use this as a roadmap, but don't be tied to the map. Go off-roading a little bit if you have to, and surprise us if it makes sense, So I'm very excited to get into sound. We've been doing ADR. Earlier this week, I ADR'd with a few of our actors, and it was good to see them again. We have a couple more sessions next week, and yeah, that's been coming together very, very well. And then musically, our composer Blake Matthew has been super busy writing a ton of music for this movie, and I think I've now seen the whole movie in pieces as far as score goes. I've listened to the score with certain sequences, kind of like 10 minutes at a time. I have yet to watch the whole movie that way, but I'll be doing that when we mix. And then that's going to be fun too, to just kind of figure out where the score really should come in, or maybe we pull back on the score in this moment where, oh, we thought music would work here, but maybe not so much anymore. But the cool thing that I'm excited about is actually right after this session, right after this little meeting, I have to hop on a Zoom because an orchestra in Prague is going to be doing a live recording of our score for Remnant. So we hired a live orchestra.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm very stoked about that.
That's so cool. That is incredible.
Yeah, Blake even sent me separately, outside of the orchestra, he sent me a video the other day of a cellist playing one of the pieces that he wrote. And like, that cellist also was a cellist in the orchestra that recorded the score for Disclosure Day. And yeah, it sounded beautiful. Like, what can I say? And like, I don't even know how to give notes on, I mean, at that point I've approved it, but when it comes to music too, I'm like, yeah, this is beautiful. It's emotional. It makes me feel something. It's totally working. I love it. So yeah, what can I say? It's all going very, very well.
Fantastic. For some reason, that's always what I've felt to be like, that's a gold standard for a film. If you can get your film recorded by like a live orchestra, a live group, and do it professionally that way, I feel as though you've just elevated the movie to another level. I know it can be done differently. And I know that that's definitely a cost associated with that, obviously, because you're paying for people. But I don't think anything replaces it. And I think that that's what takes a film from being like a good film, a really good film, to having the potential to be excellent.
It just sounds better. There's a more full, rich sound to the music. And whether you actually hear it or not, you can kind of feel it. And so, yeah, if you can afford to do it, go for it. And you don't necessarily have to do the entire film. You can even choose pieces, right? Because there's just different costs associated with that. But yeah, if you can make it happen. And then I guess the final piece with Remnant is that we've also started visual effects. So we are working with 2 top tier vendors. It took a little while to sort it all out because everybody's so busy. Now, here's the funny thing I found about getting a visual effects company on board at this time of the year. We're not the only film that is trying to get, be complete by TIFF and other major festivals. So many of these vendors are also working with other filmmakers and on other films that have a rush schedule in order to try to be complete by potentially the Toronto Film Festival or Sitges or Fantastic. And so that was a little tough to navigate, but we ended up getting 2 great vendors on board, and they're working with each other. And I started to get the first visual effects shots just yesterday and approved one of them. And yeah, it's funny because you watch this movie for months over and over again without the VFX and imagining what the VFX are going to be. And then finally the first shot comes in and it just elevates it so much. All of a sudden you're like, oh, right. Okay. This is how the movie's going to feel. This is amazing. Okay. And then add some great sound in there. Yeah. So I'm just, I'm getting restless. I want to see this film complete, and I will in potentially 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Wow.
Yeah. The goal is mid-August because, again, we don't know if we're getting into TIFF. I can only hope and pray, but that's when the DCP deadline is, and they're pretty strict about that DCP deadline. So, we have to just do whatever we can to reach that deadline. And if we don't get into TIFF, we don't get into TIFF. There are other options for sure. Like I would love Sitges or Fantastic. Both are great genre festivals. And who wouldn't want to go to Spain for the premiere of their movie? I think that would be magical.
Yeah. Well, and to your credit with this, as this is your first feature film, but I also think like you're coming at this with so much good experience having worked in like production and television and all these other aspects, is that the pace of this coming together feels very quick for there's a lot of first films that take a long time because every step becomes something where it's like, oh, we have to reinvent that, or we have to learn how to do that again. And I feel as though, you've had a game plan from the get-go. And even though there's a few adaptations and pivots and so on that you've taken, whether from the test screening, you realized you needed to do some pickups and extra shooting to kind of fill in those pieces. But it's the confidence of knowing how this whole process works from start to finish, I feel has given you the freedom to make those adaptations on the way while still staying on a very, I wouldn't say ambitious, but I just say a realistic but not slow timeline.
Yeah, it's definitely rushed, I think, as far as like a standard timeline goes. But some of that was driven by film festivals and just, we shot the movie in February and we're just up against these deadlines. And frankly, because we are an entirely privately financed film, I have a duty to get this movie done as fast as possible so that my investors can start making their money back. Like if this was all soft money from Telefilm, like, okay, no offense, but who cares? Like the stakes are so low. You don't owe anybody money back. There's going to be a small private investment portion probably, but yeah, this is the film business. It's not, it's not the film club. And so we have to deliver. And what's been great also during this whole process, and I don't think I've talked about this publicly, at least not on the podcast, but we have a sales agent on board, an international sales agent, the Coven. They are absolutely wonderful. I love them all so much, and working with Kendall and Anel. And so the Coven, for those that aren't familiar, their big claim to fame is the Terrifier franchise.
Okay.
And so Terrifier, I think they were producers on Terrifier 2 and 3. And Terrifier 3 grossed like $100 million at the box office, maybe like between 90 and 100. And so, the Coven knows how to sell a horror film, and they have great relationships, and they've been wonderful partners. And I can say, I mean, we had to keep this under our hat for a while, but like we had the Coven attached before we even went to production on Remnant. And we also, Blue Fox Canada is our Canadian distributor. And so we had Blue Fox attached also before we went into production. So we knew that we had a distribution path even before filming the movie. And working with the Coven, we've been keeping them up to date on cuts, and so they were really blown away by the director's cut. They said it was one of the best director's cuts that they've seen in a very long time, and because of that, they felt very confident in even showing screener cuts at the Cannes Film Festival. So I can't get into any major details, but yeah, the movie's already been sold to multiple territories, with other territories already lined up based on the poster, the trailer, and they just want to see how the film turns out at the end. Are the visual effects good? Is the sound design good? Like, did the filmmakers deliver? And if so, we potentially have a bunch of buyers on the other side. So knock on wood, fingers crossed, all of that good stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting position to be in. And this is my first time through, on anything like this at this scale. So I'm learning a lot about the traditional distribution path.
And the nice thing about that is that, again, Coven was really happy with your director's cut, which means that the vision of the film has been kept intact. It hasn't been restructured according to just trying to fit it into a bullseye that gets recreated. And I've heard a lot of times where you find yourself not delivering the project that they want to sell properly, and so you have to kind of rejig it to make it fit what they're looking for. But if you haven't shot the pieces to begin with, it's hard to reimagine the film in a different way without essentially, MacGyvering it together in a way that makes sense for the distributor. So having the feedback on board right from the beginning, I think, was very helpful for you, because those folks knew what they were getting. They knew what they could sell or what they could potentially sell. And all you had to do was execute on what you had promised them and go from there.
Exactly. And I mean, there's one film that I'm not going to name the film, but it was billed as a horror movie, and what they ended up delivering was something more of like a dramatic thriller / like with horror elements, but it wasn't distinctly a horror movie. And the sales agent just didn't know how to sell that film, because is it horror? Is it drama? Is it thriller? We can't fit it into this box. And so if you say you're going to make something and you don't deliver that, you're shooting yourselves in the foot, because what is the sales agent supposed to do? And so even going into Remnant, the Coven had a few notes on the script, and just sort of like, not warnings, but just some advice where they're like, well, just make sure that like this part is really effective and scary, because like in the script, this was really scary. So please make sure that it turns out the same way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we hit the mark for the most part. And so they were really happy with everything. And even from Blue Fox or the Coven, none of the notes were prescriptive. They trusted us to get it done, and I think we did. And so far the process has been great. And look, I mean, up to now, we've had a lot of creative freedom. We designed the poster ourselves, and they seem to really like it. And the trailer, we agreed that they have a trailer guy to cut a trailer together, and that was the best decision, because I was so busy with editing the movie. The last thing I wanted to do was like go in and cut a trailer together. Also, cutting a trailer it's a different medium. Like you're not cutting a scene together, and you're telling a story in a different way for how to sell this movie. And there are some people that are just really good at that. They can watch a movie and be like, I know how the trailer should be cut together for this. And I'm not one of those people. I like working on the full movie and the scenes within it. But yeah, cutting a trailer, not for me. So it worked out. We got a great trailer, and they showed it at Cannes, and that generated some buzz. And now we're on to the next steps of just finishing this damn movie. So
fantastic. All right. This is a good transition. We were going to, I think, we were going to transition over to another film that has already climbed the mountain, if you will.
Well, no kidding. I mean, so Obsession, right? This is crazy what this film is doing, and nobody could have predicted that it would be as successful as it is. And it's approaching $300 million worldwide right now.
Yeah.
It's breaking every record, and it just simply does not happen. I mean, it grew like 39% in its second week. It grew another 19% in its third week. It continued to grow into its fourth week. In its third Wednesday, it made $5 million, which is more than what Avengers Endgame or even these major successful films have been able to achieve. And so it has just been blowing expectations out of the water. And what's interesting to me is that it's ultimately, I mean, it's not based on IP. It's just a very well-made indie film that was made for $750,000. Unlike Backrooms, which is based on IP, and we can get in. We'll get into the Obsession, Backrooms, YouTube of it all a little bit later. But Obsession, yeah, is breaking records, and now because of that, a lot of people are speaking out about it.
So, in context, what happened? Obviously, Obsession was made for what they're saying was $750,000, and it's about to cross 300 million. Now, to make a movie for $750,000, going back to kind of the beginning of our conversation, obviously people, everybody kind of has to make compromises in order to make that happen. You're not getting a crew necessarily at their budgeted rate that they normally go at, their quoted rate, so to speak. Everybody's kind of taking a haircut or doing it for a different reason that other than the financial reward. Because if you were to pay people their actual quote, you could never make it for $750,000. It would be very difficult to do so, which is what a lot of films end up being. A lot of, especially in the horror genre, but just in the first film world, you're usually operating within that $250,000 to $750,000 range. So what has happened out of this, of course, is that now that the movie has been a great success, I don't want to say that everybody, but let's just say that it has been reported publicly and commented on that the art director for Obsession began commenting on her experience with the film and how she was paid $300 a day, and basically with no mileage and no reimbursements and so on, which basically made it so that she earned, roughly about $6,500 to $7,000 after taxes over the 22-day film shoot. Yeah. And so she's now come on and said, she's made it clear that, she agreed to that before she accepted the job. She was living paycheck to paycheck at the time. So the money was needed, but also like not a high amount, but it was enough to get her going. She says that she was asked to take on other duties including working as a PA, set dresser, graphic designer, even being a background actor in some scenes. A lot of different roles as the art director for the film. She had considered at some point actually flipping the production, which is industry term for taking a shoot from non-union to union, and she was encouraged not to, and decided to listen to that, which she says she later has come to regret. And so anyway, this has created a bit of a stir, I think, amongst people in the film industry, and especially in the independent film industry, about what do you do with a film that has been, where everybody took cut rates in order to be a part of it, but it has seen amazing success since then. And of course, Curry Barker, the director, has commented since then. But let's set that as the basis point for the discussion, and we can go from there. So overall, Ken, I have my thoughts. What are your thoughts on this? Controversy, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, this whole thing is so divisive, and I guess I'll start by saying, like, I get where Sally Choi is coming from. Okay, like indie film, it would be great if we could pay more and crews could benefit from the success of the films that they make. But 9 times out of 10, these films actually lose money. And so my question then is like, well, would she be saying this if the film wasn't this smash success and going on to make $300 million? And the answer is clearly like, no. She might complain about just not getting paid enough privately, but like, oh, the Obsession, we made Obsession, it didn't get distribution, it'll end up on Tubi or something like that, and that's that. Then nobody's going to talk about this. So that's kind of like, I'm like, okay, let's just recognize that this is an anomaly. Now, should the crew benefit from the wild success of Obsession? The way I look at it is, for an indie film, $300 a day isn't that bad of a rate, actually. To be honest, we paid a little bit more on Remnant. I think our base was like $350 to $400. With that said, the art director knew what she was signing up for, and she made a deal. And frankly, if she wanted back-end points, she should have negotiated that in advance, and that could have been something that could have been given to her. The other thing too is that her credits aren't that amazing going into Obsession, but she's now made Obsession. Like, this is it's all about leverage. Every single part of this is all about leverage. So what leverage does she have going into this negotiation? Very, very little, because she hasn't, it's not like she was the art director of a major studio movie and then stepping down to do an indie. Okay, so Obsession is a step up. Now that Obsession is made, she's now the art director of Obsession. Every single person on this crew can now work double scale on anything they ever do and demand a higher number. And that's what this whole industry is built on. It's about you do the work, you do good work, you get recognized for that work, you get a bump up. You do another good job, you get a bump up, you get a bump up. And then next thing you know, you're doing James Cameron's film,
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how this works. My other take on this is there's no risk, right? So the people who should really benefit from the success of a film are the ones that take on the most risk. And so she made her deal, and I'll not even just use her as the only example, but like whether it's the gaffer or other crew members, they come in, they make their deal, they get paid for the work that they're doing. I bet you Curry Barker was not even paid for directing this movie at $750,000, or if he was, it would have been maybe $300 a day. Like the whole crew got the same rate or something like that. So I don't think Curry Barker made that much money actually making Obsession. But I also don't know what sort of deal Curry Barker had, he and the producers, as far as who, like, ownership of the film, because Capstone, from what I understand, funded it. And they're like a finance firm or production company, financiers out of the UK. So they're taking on the risk of spending $750,000. And I'm assuming that they own it, or at least a good chunk of it. But my point is, if you're a crew member, they got paid and they worked for 20 days, made 10 grand, walked away, and then went on to go do something else while other people were left holding the bag. And if the film bombed, Capstone would be out $750,000.
Right.
To put it in context as well, using Remnant as an example, Chris and I had to personally guarantee a loan for almost $1 million in tax credits to get Remnant made. So if Remnant does not get finished, I am on the hook for almost $1 million personally.
Right.
Like, do you know how scary that is?
Yeah.
And so, like, if Remnant's a success, yeah, damn right I should benefit from it. I'm risking my entire livelihood making this movie right now. And the art director that worked on Remnant is not.
Yep.
Absolutely not. Now, one more thing I'll say about back-end deal and crew points. There are a handful of crew members on Remnant that are getting back-end points. And again, it comes down to leverage. I wanted a certain production designer. I could not afford that production designer. So we made a deal, right? Like, it's how it works. It's leverage. And frankly, if she wanted a back end of this, she should be saying that with every single indie that she does, hoping that it's a smash success, or, again, most of the time it won't be. But that's where I'm at to start. What do you think?
I've tried to look at this from both sides of the equation, because I think I've been in both worlds. And when I was first getting going as an assistant director, I was working on a lot of indie projects. I mean, there were many where $100 a day was my rate. Like, it wasn't what we would call minimum wage. It was just taking, because I wanted the experience of working on, I needed experience, and I needed to get some credibility in order to move up, in order to start to do bigger and bigger and bigger shows. So from that standpoint, I would tend to say that I had no leverage. I had no, me versus someone else was a matter of price point at that point. It's like I'm coming in offering my services for the best rate. But I was also working on a show with people who were also kind of coming into it as first timers, like first time directors, first time writers, first time, the actors were kind of newer and getting their feet on the door. So everybody kind of entered it with the same approach. Now, some people had more experience. There were definitely the DP had, a couple of decades of experience under their belt. And so they were probably paid much higher than I was. At that point in my career, I wasn't really even thinking about back-end points on a project. I was just more thinking about, I just need to get useful credits and I need to get experience. I can't expect to be asked and hired onto a big show and paid what people in my position would get paid on a bigger show, unless I'm willing to do the groundwork. I have to spend some time in the minors first. And I didn't even think at the time if that movie was successful, whether or not I would get a cut of it. What I thought at the time was, if that movie is successful, then I will have been a part, just like you were saying, I will have been a part of that movie, and I can use my role in that movie as leverage towards the next film, as I do now, because I've worked on some movies that have had, have made it into TIFF. I've worked on movies that have gotten on Amazon. I've worked with the people who made Backrooms. It's like, I use that as leverage in future projects, because I go, okay, I did work with I've worked on these projects before and they made it. They weren't necessarily as financially successful, but they were the same group of people. So I now have that institutional authority to be able to say, look, on my next project, this is now my rate. And on the flip side, I also have the ability, as people might do, to say, look, I'm willing to take a lower rate on an independent project in exchange for some kind of back-end points. If I believe in the project, I believe it can do well. Hey, I'm willing to take a hit now with the idea that if the movie does well, I'll get a little bit more, up to whatever points I can negotiate. So I think from a crew standpoint, that's the way you should be approaching every project. If you're just getting started out, it sounds very, very callous, but be grateful to be given the opportunity. The idea of there's always that joke of, when people are advertising for crew positions, we promised you there will be good food and good people to work with. And at some point you stop taking jobs, or you stop even applying for jobs because of that particular selling feature, because you sort of expect that there will be good people to work with and that there will be good food. But at the beginning, sometimes you go, look, I want to get moving. I want to get into the industry, and I need as many days on set as I possibly can. And the fact that you're working paycheck to paycheck and you need to make a living, I mean, that's kind of not the production's problem. That's your problem. And I think you do that. And if you're prolific enough and if you're good at what you do, you will get better opportunities. And this art director, like whoever did the production design and the art direction and the costuming for Obsession, is going to go places. They're going to be high. Like, they've all probably got jobs lined up if they want them. Same thing with Backrooms, right? Like,
well, yeah. Like if I was producing a film in LA and I saw a resume come across my desk for, again, the gaffer, production designer, costume designer, art director of Obsession, I would sit up, I'd perk up a little bit and be like, whoa, okay, this is cool. Mm-hmm. And I just think this post was a really tone deaf thing to do. Like, I get the larger argument about, crew should be compensated, and we can get into like, should a portion of back end points just go to the whole crew? That's, I think, what Sally was also getting at here. But this post about flipping the crew and like regretting not making it a union show, that to me is like, again, like our Remnant's union signatory for wherever we had to be. But this idea of like, oh, I really wish I screwed over the producers on this one because I didn't get paid enough or I didn't get a back end point. That just seems a little, I don't know. I don't like that.
I do agree with this is that, we all should fight for good work conditions. So I don't believe if she was paid, if she was paid $200, $300 a day, and that didn't have any like overtime attached to it, or what happened is that she wound up being asked to and forced to work 16 to 18-hour days and put her health and safety at risk in order to work that production. And if she hadn't have done it, someone else would have stepped right in and done it. I don't agree with that. I think that the other side of the equation here is that the production has to live within its means. So it's a lot easier to make a low budget production if you abuse the crew.
Yeah.
Or if you don't worry about feeding them every day, like if you feed them the cheapest food you can possibly get, and it's so tiny that it's not even really considered food, like it's, a chicken wing.
Which I keep hearing about, with like micro dramas right now. That's a prevalent thing. The verticals, they're
exactly. So if you're all you're getting is a chicken wing for lunch because they're saving money on that and they're making money off the backs of that type of work. That's the flip side of this story, and that's obviously where union protection comes into play. And I think that there's value in that, and that's where though I think that there is a line to get through, and that's as an onus as a producer or as producers on projects and as projects that you want to work with is. A producer's role is to make sure that the production is a safe and healthy environment. So cutting corners on stunts, cutting corners on things in order to save money, cutting corners on safety in order to save money is not what I would consider to be an appropriate way to save money. Cutting corners on how you treat the crew by pushing them beyond the hours of what would be normally acceptable and not, feeding them properly, putting them in unsafe work conditions. I think that's where the onus is on the production to take care of its crew.
I agree. And she even points out that when she had to wrap out that one location, she didn't have any water or crafty around. And like, that's on the producers. That should have been taken care of, and she should not have been put in that position. I completely agree. I don't think she would have made any more money if she had flipped the crew and made it a union show, because $300 a day for that position it's under $750,000 or whatever the budget was at the time of making it. I don't know if that would have amounted to more money union wise. I guess some would have been paid into her health account and et cetera. But in the end, I agree with you wholeheartedly that like you have to protect the crew, and that's on the producers to give them a safe work environment, right? But now, what about the larger argument about should an indie production set aside back-end points for the entire crew to be split evenly?
As long as you're recognizing that the risk involved is commensurate. Like, I have no problem with taking all the key heads of positions and saying, look, proportionate to your role on the film, we will offer back end points. If the movie's successful, great. If the movie's not successful, then you get paid what you get paid. I think that if you're getting paid a normal rate for a film, I don't know that back-end points are necessarily something that you should be expecting. I think it's a hit and a miss on a lot of these things. And as I think Curry has said, and I think as you have said, is that the risk is really with you as a producer director. If you've got your own line of credit on the line and you've got to guarantee $1 million, which basically would put you out for like the next few years minimum in order to be able to come back from that, I feel as though you've earned the points, but unless someone else is putting that same risk in there, I don't see that there's a obligation to it. I think it's worth putting points aside as a negotiating step. It's like saying, look, if that's what it's going to take to get that great production designer on your film, or that great cast member, or that great DP, or that great person on the film, great. Then you have it in your back pocket. And you can do that, and that way you can do it in a way where you don't have to increase the fees that you're paying these people, which would change the way your budget structure would work. then you're using it in a productive way, and you're using it as a way of saying, look, I can't afford to pay you X amount of dollars, because if I do so, it's going to throw the whole budget out of whack. But what I can do is, I will pay you this rate, and if the movie is good, we will give you some back end on it. That's my opinion.
No, I agree. We did that with some key department heads as well. And I'm so grateful that we were able to do that. And again, it's all about leverage, and like the work is now on the screen, and because of their incredible work, the movie is that much better, and therefore has a better chance at success and seeing a return. Mm-hmm. What I don't agree with, and again, this is just my personal opinion, is that there's this is going to sound callous, but like that the entire crew, from the PA to everybody, should get a percentage of the back end. Not only because of risk, but the stories that I found out about after my movie was shot, about how some people were like drunk and like showing up high, and like I didn't know, and if I had found out, I would have fired them on the spot. Like, that's unsafe. But I'm like, no way am I going to give you money for almost screwing up my production. No way, man. And like, look, you're gonna get people on indie crews that, I mean, hell, union crews. It's not like the first time it's not the first time that like union grips have shown up with like an 8-ball or something to set. Like, come on, let's be realistic. But no, I'm not gonna share share my risk with the entire crew. If you do a good job and you can negotiate, yeah, we're in. But no, I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah, and that's a very good way to consider. I think there's definitely I know there's a discussion right now that maybe Capstone or somebody are going to like give the crew bonuses because of the way the film was successful. I don't know if that's been formally happening yet or not, but there was a discussion that might happen. Or I don't know, maybe they were just being shamed into doing it. Or shamed into saying they might consider it or something. But I don't see a problem with not offering this. And then if the movie is wildly successful, like $300 million to on a $750,000 budget, which is, movies don't like, that's a 1 in a million option. There's probably for every $750,000 movie out there that's made $300 million, there are probably 999 movies made at the same budget range that haven't made $1,000.
Not even close. Exactly. Yeah. And look, hey, after the fact, and if a movie that I'm a part of or you're a part of blows up and we make so much money, and it is because of the crew that it is that good. There's no denying that. Then yeah, for sure, a bonus I think is totally valid and encouraged. And I think that's great if Capstone does come around and give the crew a bonus in this way. I just mean in advance, as far as like in the pre-production and in the deal making, to set aside those points. I think those points could be better used for key department heads or actors or something like that. In terms of like, if you're struggling to make the movie and get it off the ground, it's a negotiating tactic. That's just how I look at it.
Yeah, I think it's a thing you keep in your back pocket. It's just like a contingency that you keep for the film, where it's like you have this contingency that you use in case of emergency. If you think it's going to make your film better, then you offer the points. And if you're a person who feels like you deserve you have the leverage as a crew member to ask for that, by all means. But remember, this is a two-way street. You can ask for it in all your contracts, but you can also have that rejected. Like the production can come back to you and say, look, we're not giving out points for this show, or we're not going to give you points for that show. And if it doesn't work out, you move on to the next person. I think it's like negotiating your rate and negotiating everything else. You're as valuable as someone thinks you are. So if imagine booking the DPs for these projects right now. Imagine booking the production designers for Obsession or for Backrooms or anything like that right now. They are in an oversubscribed state, as Darren Priest or as Darren Smith would say. They are oversubscribed, which means that they are in demand, which means that if you want them on your next project, you have to pony up. And they've earned that leverage because they've put together projects that have done really well. Whether or not I don't know if they're getting back end points on this. If they are, then good for them. But definitely on their next project. And here's the thing: like producers, who get involved in these projects, I think, are hopefully trying to do more productions, which means that for their purpose, a good art director, a good production designer, a good person is someone that they will hire again. Which hopefully that is the leverage that you're getting, is that you're going, look, I gave you this solid on the last one, but I want to get paid on this one.
Yeah, exactly. And it is about building that troupe, and even with Remnant, right? Like we know that people took a haircut as far as their wages goes, but like they did great work, and we're going to keep these people around so that we can pay them even more on the next film.
Yep.
And that's really what this is about. It's about relationship building. It's not just trying to cash in and get that lottery ticket, hoping this is the lottery ticket that you never have to be an art director again, or a gaffer, or whichever crew member, right? Like that's not the point. Don't you want to progress and like build these relationships? And I don't know, that's why this whole thing just left like a bad taste in my mouth about calling out the producers. But again, I understand the larger arguments. I disagree with a bunch of the points. I agree with some of the points. One other thing that happened in all of this is that like Jason Blum got $17 million. Blumhouse, I don't know, he wouldn't have made that directly. I think the company made $17 million off of the success of Obsession. And so people are like, well, why is Jason Blum, who came in after the movie was made, like after the sale at TIFF, why is he getting 17 million and this crew member and multiple crew members are not reaping the rewards? Well, Jason Blum is the biggest name in horror, period, and has been for a very long time. And so he has leverage. And so he has leverage to say, I'm going to put myself on this because Universal is distributing the movie through Focus Features, and Focus made a deal with Blum to come on board, Blum and Atomic Monster. And Jason Blum saying, I'm going to put myself behind this because if I put myself behind this, people are going to go, holy shit, this is a really good horror film. Okay, cool. That definitely helped Obsession get to $300 million. And so, yeah, Jason Blum built himself in a box office bonus and made 17 million.
Yep.
Like, okay, I get that. That's clear as day to me.
Yeah, it seems like the work that he put in wasn't commensurate to the work that the art director put in. But here's the thing, that movie, all this I talk of like how did Obsession get recognized and get known? It got it known because people like Blumhouse and Focus Features put some money behind the marketing campaign to get them visible, to make them visible. They recognized they had a good film on their plate, but they also knew that nobody would hear about it if they didn't put some extra bit of juice into it. And as if you listen to some of the reports that came out, I mean, just like this sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge is, they set up fake Twitter accounts and all these other things in order to create word of mouth for the movie, like things like that.
Yeah, I got to figure out how the marketing team does this,
right?
Because like no kidding, right? That's how you make something go viral. Nothing actually goes viral. It's all fake viralness, virality,
fake virality.
They created this ecosystem for everybody to be obsessed with Obsession.
Yep, and
it worked. It totally worked.
They followed the Blair Witch Project, original Blair Witch Project approach, which was they created a demand and an audience for the movie artificially, although it felt like it was organic. And this is, again, you have to have a good movie behind it. The movie has to be solid and good and worth, the performances are amazing. Obviously, like I think it's well-made film. But all of that, like Jason Blum and Focus Features, I don't think it's a $300 million film without their involvement. So it's just like if George Clooney had put his stamp on the film but never once appeared in it, suddenly it's worth something. And this is something that we always talk about with the film industry. It's like it is about who is standing up for your film, and if that person has some juice in the world, it has some fame in the world, you're going to get something out of it, and that's what's going to increase its value. So if Jason Blum walks away, or Blumhouse walks away with $17 million out of this because they made it a Blumhouse production, they probably made the film an extra 50 million to 100 million in having been involved.
Exactly. There's also one other really great resource I think that everybody should check out, which is Manette Louie's Instagram post, which is a hypothetical waterfall of what it actually, what the the film distribution waterfall might actually look like for Obsession. And for anybody unaware of what a waterfall is, that's basically how the money trickles downward from top dollar grosses at the theater all the way to what the producers make and how those potential deals work out. Manette also was on The Town with Matt Bellamy earlier this week or last week. And she broke it down because this is just a really, really great post to talk about what everybody on Obsession might actually be making. And I think that's like the number one question, right? People are like, what is Curry Barker making on this? And I don't know, because as far as we know, Capstone owns the movie. And so I'm so interested. Like, I wish I was there, like a paralegal working at that firm where I had this contract to take a look at who owns the movie and what are the percentages of how this all plays out. But yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, when Manette's post came out, I think the U.S. box office was at 126 million. It has since gone up, from there in a big way. But, one thing to keep in mind is that the theaters are making 50% off the top, right? So if it's $300 million worldwide, let's just assume now it's 150 million. That's now going to the distributors, but not even Focus. It's all the various distributors for each territory in the worldwide sales of it all. And not to get too deep into it, but yeah, I think it's just a really good thing to look at, to just see how the money is trickling down and who's making the most here. And I think ultimately it's going to be Focus that walks away with the most.
Yep. Yeah. And the great thing about for everybody who wins in this is that, Focus owns the rights to a sequel. I think Blumhouse has rights to a sequel, and Curry has a deal to develop another film, but also potentially to develop sequels as well. So there's a win-win-win-win around. And, if I were playing my cards right and I'd worked on that original film and I knew that they were getting a sequel and I had done a good job, then, the expectation hopefully is that rising ship lifts all boats kind of thing. And rising tide lifts all boats. And we all get a little bit more in the end. And in the end, there's, it's unusual to be in the field that we're in right now, which I think transitions well into our next thing. But it's unusual in the world we're in right now that we're seeing this sort of revival of art house horror films that are not, I thought Longlegs was sort of this, a one-off, if you will, not a one-off, but just like, oh, wow, look at that unicorn that just happened to break through. And now you're just seeing repeated from different groups of people, repeated different success stories. And it doesn't mean that doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, hopefully that's positive news for Remnant, but it doesn't guarantee anything to anybody. But it shows that there is a pathway right now. Like, there is an open door, and people are taking notice of it right now, because they're noticing that there is a pathway now for independent film to break through the traditional system, and in fact, maybe even break the traditional system.
Yeah, there's been a lot of chatter in the last few weeks about this being a watershed moment for the film industry. And we sort of hear this every single year when a successful horror film comes out. I think Longlegs was one of the examples from 2024. I'm trying to remember what it was last year. But we do keep hearing this, except this time it feels different. It feels, because there were two horror films that came out a week apart, or whatever that was, that, like, Obsession is breaking all of these records, and Curry Barker is, quote unquote, a YouTuber. Now, he has a huge TikTok following, a huge YouTube following. He made a feature film called Milk and Cereal for like $500 or $800, I think it was, posted that to YouTube. And he's been making YouTube shorts with his partner, is it Ian Tomlinson? And they've been making these videos for quite a while, and they have quite a big following. On the flip side, Kane Parsons created Backrooms. And Backrooms it started as a post on 4chan with just a few still images of these creepy looking rooms. And he sort of built this creepypasta world around it. And since then, he has developed it into a series of short films that then other fans have gone on to create fan inspired short films in the same world as Backrooms. And it's really, really well done because Kane is super young. He's 20 years old now. So he started this when he was, I think, 14 or 15. He made his first short around 16, I believe. Or at least that's when Blumhouse and Atomic Monster were talking to him, was like 4 years ago. But Kane also has a visual effects background. He's very versed in Blender. And so he's able to make this really effective handy-cam looking short film with visual effects in it. And it's super creepy. It's really, really well done. And it's amassed 200 million followers on YouTube. And so you have these two guys who are quote unquote YouTubers. But one film, let's just acknowledge, is straight up IP, like short film on YouTube. Curry Barker had Obsession. That's not the case, right? Obsession is just a well-made original horror film. But then you have other people like Markiplier, right, who made Iron Lung, who self-financed it for $3 million, has made $50 million at the box office, distributing it himself. So again, if we're looking at box office numbers, well, 50 million, so take 50% off the top, that's going to theaters. But Markiplier now has $25 million to play with. Again, I don't know who owns that film outright. It sounds like he does. And I wonder what that waterfall is like. Like, did that guy just walk away with $20 million? Like, maybe. Yeah. But then there's Chris Stuckmann, who's another YouTuber, like a film critic on YouTube, who made Shelby Oaks that came out last year. And I want to say there are a couple more that their names are escaping me. But the big, I don't know, lesson that Hollywood, I think, wants to be taking away from all of this is we should just hire YouTubers to make our next films. And I don't think that that's the lesson. I think that I'll just jump in. My personal opinion is that what's made Curry Barker and Kane Parsons and Markiplier and Chris Stuckmann, successful in these various degrees is just simply the fact that YouTube is a training ground for them to make videos, get better at directing, get better at editing, get better at taking audience feedback and adjusting it and delivering something that people want. It's not necessarily the fact that it's a YouTube video that made them successful. In the case of Kane Parsons, like, sure, that's the IP, but it's these people who just have a training ground and they're able to develop their skills and make good original movies. That's my opinion.
I definitely agree. And I think that you hit a really good point on that. It's a training ground. Like, so if we want to talk about what you and I were probably taught in film school, maybe not taught, but at least learned in film school in terms of if you want to get a project off the ground, first you need to make, you have to get some recognition at a film festival on a short film. That's kind of like the sort of traditional path is make a couple of good shorts that get recognized. And if you if you meet the right people, or if you're able to connect with the right people, that short film could be a calling card to a feature film idea. Like, that's essentially the pathway that we're all given at film school. Now, what defines a short film is what this comes into, is this idea that what we used to have to do is we had to spend $100,000 or $50,000 or $75,000 and really like make a very polished short film that caught everybody's attention. In my opinion, now a lot of the costs associated with that have now been taken out of the picture. Cameras are cheaper, editing software is cheaper. You can do a lot of that on your own, but the fundamentals have not changed. You still need to make a good project to get attention. Now, the difference is that you don't necessarily need the film to be successful at a short film festival or at a film festival, and you don't have to wait a year. You make your short film and it takes you 6 to 8 to 12 months for you to get it into the festivals in the first place. And then you go, and then you hopefully are able to finagle that. But in the meantime, you just have to make another short film and get it into another festival. That's the part I think that has changed with the YouTube phenomenon, if you want to call it that, because these filmmakers can go out, put together a project, because the equipment cost is so low. It's just now the talent that the storytelling talent and their ability to understand the filmmaking genre and the filmmaking process and how films are made. that they can then spend their time doing and put out more and more and more of these, to the point where the people who are paying attention can no longer ignore you. So
Yeah.
if you're Curry Barker, if you're these people, you're putting out prolific work. Markiplier put out entertaining work for many, many, many years and built a following of 30 million people. And then suddenly he got involved with production. I was the assistant director on that production with him, and it gave him some more notoriety. It gave him filmmaking experience and acting experience that allowed him to parlay that into a film, a project that he wanted to make, that he just self-financed himself. So nobody could say no to him at any step along the way. Nobody could say no to him because he owned everything leading up to the making of that film. So he's not waiting for permission from anybody. So he owns every step along the way. And then he's putting it out on YouTube himself. So he owns that process too. So at no point can a studio come in and say, Markiplier, you cannot, your film's not ready. We can't put it out there. So he benefits from all of that work he's done, learning how to make films, different types of films in his basement, so to speak, for many years. Like Markiplier's been out there. He's one of the OG YouTubers. So that's a 15-year career right there that he's already built before he makes this film that comes out. Curry Barker, same thing. Kane, same thing. They're learning their craft. Kane's learning Blender and making stuff in Blender and learning the craft, and now he's able to do that. So, but because he doesn't have to wait for a film festival to meet the people that he needs to meet, that film's already out there, and he's able to get there. And then by the time this all happens, he's so good they can't ignore him, and now there's a bidding war for his project.
Yeah.
So I think
exactly right.
I think that's the only difference. The difference is that the filmmaker is now able to learn at scale, is able to practice and learn at scale.
Yeah, and I think what's happening now, I saw, some studios are now just looking for the next viral YouTube short that they can adapt into a feature. And I'm like, this is not the way to go about it. Like, maybe that thing could be a great idea as a feature, but again, look at the filmmaker themselves, right? Don't go after the IP, go after the filmmaker. Do they have what it takes to actually tell a story over 90 or to 120 minutes and actually create a good movie? And also the discussion, the discourse between Obsession and Backrooms. Like, I had a great time. I had a better time in the theater watching Backrooms, to be honest, because I felt it was more cinematic and I really liked the world. Obsession is a better script and better performed. In my opinion, the story of Backrooms was a little too thin and the characters were a little too thin. But I had a great time watching both films. But Obsession is just a really well-made horror film, and Curry did a great job pulling that off, especially for the resources that he had. And again, Obsession was not IP. It was not a YouTube short. So Hollywood, in my opinion, should just simply be looking at, again, let's just make good original movies. And Curry has said this himself in a recent interview. He's like, it's not about IP. It's not about original movies. It's just actually about good stories. Like, let's just find good stories with good scripts and good characters. And like, that should be able to shine through. And if you can just put a little bit of money behind that and support the filmmakers, and whether you're a 20-year-old or mid-30s or in your 50s doing these things, it shouldn't matter. Let's just get good stories on the screen, because people are clearly wanting that at the theaters, and people are going to the theaters. Like, the box office right now is doing really, really well. And that's simply because there are some good original stories out there.
Yeah, that's the very promising outlook, I think, for this, is that if you have a good idea, the idea is made well, people will talk about it, and suddenly you're going to have lineups out the door to go see your film. I mean, Star Wars original is like built on word of mouth, and we're just taking it for the modern age and doing the exact same thing, where we're adding. We have to take into account all these opportunities that are out there, but in a world where everything is so niche, where it's like, you've got to find your niche, It's like the box office is the biggest example of the niche is not what we think the niche is. Like, I was talking with my nephew who went to see Backrooms, and even he said, you know, it wasn't really my type of movie, but all my friends were going, so I went.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, my nephew's a teenager, right? So I think to myself, that's what we're looking for, is that it's about creating social and community experiences. And that's what's going to make these things grow. And I mean, it doesn't have to be, I mean, horror is sort of seeing its golden age right now in this regard, because you're seeing very artistically made horror films. These aren't Roger Corman.
But with universal themes, right? Like Obsession spoke to Gen Z in a way, and Backrooms has captured, hundreds of millions of people as well. And the films are still like about something strong and that resonates with people thematically, with certain audiences, versus something like, we just saw Disclosure Day come out, and that is one of the highest original sci-fi opening for a Spielberg film ever, at $100 million globally. But the audience was way different. 59% of the audience for Disclosure Day was over 35. So that's telling you, like, okay, Gen Z's not really seeing Disclosure Day. Spielberg still has a big pull with everybody because he's Spielberg, but most of the audience for Obsession and for Backrooms was under 35, at quite a high margin. So yeah, I mean, they're speaking to their audience, and Gen Z, I got to say, I was disappointed in them at first, but man, they're the ones saving movie theaters right now. So It's pretty great.
They're turning movie theaters into movie theaters again. And I love the fact that, you have legacy filmmakers like Spielberg who can put out a film, and you'll have that audience that'll go see it. I don't think, my nephews or people in the Gen Z age are going to be necessarily attracted or have the same pull to Spielberg that you or I might have, but that's great. They don't have to, because I'm glad that there's a new generation of filmmakers, and who knows? I don't know that any one of these people are ever going to be the next Spielberg. That's for time to tell whether or not they turn into the next one. Talk to me in 30 years when their body of work is out, and let's see what they're making. But it's good to know that it's out there, and it's good to know that there's a recognized pathway now that says, these are two very different made films. One was made for $750,000, one was made for $10 million, but they're both kind of being played in the same, played up the same way, made in a very different style, original IP versus original story, IP versus original story. So different methods, different ways to get there, but it doesn't change the fact that you still have to do the fundamentals. You still have to know how to make a good film. And in this case, what they're doing is they're learning on YouTube, they're getting feedback on YouTube, and they're practicing their craft. They aren't necessarily studying film history, but they're practicing their craft because these are films that look like movies. They look like they are not fast cutting YouTube videos, right? Like they're not just a 2-hour YouTube video. They are actual cinematic movies made the way movies are made. So they're following the fundamentals and doing them, and just doing them in a very creative, nuanced, interesting way. And that for me feels like a justification for all of it, because it's not like we're watching a bunch of Instagram influencers make films. We're watching people who are learning how to make films on YouTube, the way that you and I learned how to make them at film school, but they're able to do it more at scale now than what existed 20 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Awesome. Well, on that note,
I think we've covered a lot of ground today. I hope that gives everybody a sense of what the world is looking like right now for film, and for independent film specifically, and film as a business as well.
Totally. Well, until next week, Anthony, I'll see you then.
See you then.
Okay, so that's it for this week's episode of Off the Lot. We want to hear from you. If there are any topics you want covered or any questions you'd like answered, please email us at podcast.offthelot@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. Our handles are in the show notes. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And share this with your friends. See you next week.